How did you get to New York? What's that story?
I grew up in Connecticut, and I went to school at the University of Wisconsin, and then afterwards, well, you're smirking already?
Your joke from
you
the
know
other
the
night.
joke?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Should I say the joke?
Please do.
I went to a very good college. I'm not going to say which one, but it's top 3. Harvard, Yale, University of Wisconsin. Yeah. You like that? And then after Wisconsin, I went and I worked in investment banking in New York. So that was where I moved back to the East Coast.
The dream.
Yeah. Quite a painful dream. So that's the origin story of New York.
How was investment banking?
Well, I'm a comedian now, so it was harrowing.
God.
It was. I'm very grateful for it in retrospect because I think it sort of scared the crap out of me of this being my life.
Yeah.
And it was sort of one of those things where it was one that I wanted to want. Like, I love the idea of it, and I don't think I did the joke, but most of the job for me, the enjoyment came out of telling people I was an investment banking analyst, and that's not a good reason to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, you want to have what we're talking about, the intrinsic motivation of something like that. And then I was like, if I'm working 90 hours a week, I might as well do something I actually enjoy.
Yeah.
So, I really hated it, and I did the internship before that, so I knew what I was getting myself into. But in between the internship and starting full time, I was like, this is untenable. And I was going to leave immediately. So I quit the day my bonus hit my bank account. Yeah.
For people that know nothing about investment banking, what is a day in the life typically of someone who's starting out their career in that industry?
Well, I think it does vary. I was a very bad employee, so I can't even tell you. It was it totally depends on the group you were in. I was in the mergers and acquisitions group at Credit Suisse. Oh, I shouldn't be saying the bank. It no longer exists anyways. May it rest in peace. But I think it's one of those where you're either working on kind of sell side transactions where the bank is advising a company on how to sell the business to another business or private equity sponsor and stuff. So you're putting together a lot of PowerPoint slides, Excel stuff, doing valuation stuff. And the day to day is, I was just basically doing all the grunt work of the PowerPoint slides, messing all that stuff up. And then, other just like Excel modeling and stuff like that. But it's a thing where you'll get in at like 9 or 10, and then you might not have anything to do until 3 p.m. or it'll be a very chill day, and then you get some work or whatever, and then you're there till 2 a.m. or something like that. And it's like it's supposed to be like a 90-hour work week job. So
how long did it take for you to realize like I can't fucking do this?
I did the internship. I agreed to go back full time, but in between I went. Did I do that? I can't keep referencing my jokes on this. They didn't know about it, but my transformative experience studying abroad in Barcelona. I don't know if I made fun of that, but
yes, you did. Yeah,
I did.
You did.
But that I did study abroad, and it was one of those things that I think there I started to panic of the consequences of what I had just signed myself up for, and I was just terrified of that. But I think because growing up in Connecticut, there's this idea of a traditional path. I always say like they treat life like it's a multiple choice exam where you, I don't know, you can work in 4 different paths.
Yes.
Finance, business, sales, law, whatever, all that stuff. And I was like, okay, this is what it constitutes success.
Yeah.
But I think when I went over there for something, I think I started reading and it sort of cracked open or widened the aperture of possibility out there. And I just remember feeling this insane sense of relief that I was like, okay, I don't need to do this. And even though, because I was sort of like, okay, I'm going to try to do this and then do the whatever private equity business school. And that my body, like physically, like was feeling so much anxiety. And I for some reason, I eventually felt this release and I was like, you don't have to do that. But I still returned full time. I just knew on day one that I was just going to quit the day my bonus hit my bank account.
How bad was the anxiety and how clear was that signal internally?
Well, here's an interesting thing that I wanted to preface that I was going to say before. So do you know aphantasia? Have you heard of that?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I can't create images in my head.
Oh, interesting.
At all. And so I also have a related condition called severely deficient autobiographical memory. And so what that means is because I can't create images, I can't replay the past at all. Yeah.
Huh.
So it's one of those things where I cannot tell you, I can never time travel back to how I felt. So the example I give is, the helicopter crash a month ago.
Yes.
I saw that happen. I was there. Yeah, I was there with my friend. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was not a pleasant sight, but I can't replay that in my head. I can't. I have no recall. And so everything in my head is stored as a bullet point. So when you ask me like how bad was the anxiety, it was like I remember thinking it was bad, but I cannot tell you how it was. And so a lot of my story, I'm sort of an unreliable narrator of my own life because I can't replay. Like I remember barely anything from college or my childhood as a result. But I remember it was a very important cue to me that like my whole body was locked up. I was like, something needs to change. But I think at the time I was still so like, no, this is what you signed up for. This is like you worked so hard to get it. There was a sunk cost. And eventually I think maybe the reading was like something just cracked open where it's like, no, you don't have to do this. And there's another path. Yeah. And I think that's where I started more of my intellectual journey of, I don't know, trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do with my life. But
what triggered that? The actual decision to leave? What's worth noting about that? Was that really difficult? In part because of your background, how hard you had worked?
I think what was difficult, it was not difficult because I wanted to quit every single day.
You hated it.
Yeah, I really hated it. I think what was the issues were, one, I think the guy who got me the job or helped me get the job was a Wisconsin alum, and he kind of stuck his neck out for me to get it. And I think by quitting that early, I was just letting him down, and I felt bad doing that. I was just like, I simply cannot. This is just too painful. And I think the issue was it was a twofold pain where it was not only the pain of doing something I don't enjoy and I'm working crazy hours and not sleeping at all, but there was also the pain of opportunity cost, where it's like I had already started reading and all this stuff, and finding things that really spoke to my soul, and every hour that I was spending in the office doing something I hated was an hour I wasn't spending doing there. And I was like, why am I suffering for no reason when I'm not going to stay in finance? There's no reason for me to do this. So that's what made it extremely easy as a decision to leave. But I think there was a lot of pushback, partly parents and stuff and friends like what do you do? Like, why are you throwing away this opportunity? You work so hard to get this. And I don't think they understood how misaligned it was kind of at the time with me, where I was like, no, this is untenable. Yeah.
What were you learning intellectually? What in your reading was formative for you?
I was reading all sorts of different stuff. I think I started a big, Charlie Munger.
Of course.
Yeah. The
legend.
The legend. Yeah. Rest in peace. I read the Poor Charlie's Almanac, which was very helpful. The idea of the lattice work of mental models and really approaching life from a multidisciplinary lens really resonated with me. And so I just was reading all over the thing, philosophy, psychology. I was reading literature. And so a big influence was 16th century French philosopher Montaigne. I don't know. He was big. I was reading the Stoics, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius. But then I was still also reading a lot of like business book, Peter Thiel, 0 to 1. Yeah. But I was, and then Joseph Campbell, all sorts of different stuff. And to me, it was really cool because there was no destination I had in mind. It was a very bottom up process of like, let's just see what following my curiosity, see what resonates, and just journal about that and see what kind of arises. I think a lot of the finding comedy stuff was like a emergent property of me just, I don't know, sticking to what really spoke to my soul at the time. And then through trial and error, I found it. But
how long did it take to make that determination?
Of starting comedy?
Yeah.
So I started comedy. My first ever open mic was in December of 2018. And I quit finance in March of 2017. So it took me about, a little over a year and a half to find that. So I really view the beginning of my journey that in that Barcelona, that fall of 2015, when I view it as like a genuine awakening of sorts. And so I think in my head, it took 3 years from when I woke up to find what I thought I was meant to do, which I don't think was very long, but so I guess, it did take me about a year and a half from the time I quit Credit Suisse. But
were you always funny?
See, this is the aphantasia. I'm sure some people, I don't remember. I thought I was funny, but a lot of people did not think I was funny, I guess. Well, at least they told me that later, that they said I had a good sense of humor, but then other people have said I was always very funny. So I'm very torn on this, and because I can't replay, I don't replay my life. I was like, I guess I don't know. I think I was. I had some great lines that I can't repeat here, but yeah, but I think that was a part of a big issue. I think probably what hindered me from starting out in comedy earlier is that I was thinking to myself, like, who am I to do comedy? Like, what makes me, like, why am I chosen to do this? And obviously that's not even how it works. Like, you just keep doing something and, I don't know, you get better or you don't and you quit. But it's I think that self-doubt compounded with other people being like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? I think really exacerbated a lot of the negativity towards it. And I think that happened for a while. I think it was only until a little after the pandemic where I felt like, okay, no, this is actually a viable pursuit for me. Yeah.
In whatever you can recall or is worth talking about, I'd love to talk about the early years of you getting up on that first open mic.
Once again, I can't replay, but I can tell you, I remember wanting to take a class to sort of ease my way into it. That made it feel less scary. But instead, my friends and I went to an open mic. It was a variety mic. So there was like poetry and music and stuff like that. And we were just there to watch. And this has never happened since, but at that mic, there was a naked man who performed, butt naked, maybe 60 years old.
Oh my God.
With a giant nut, just a single nut. And he did poetry about the nut. And it was one of the funniest things. And I've never seen him since, but it was quite. So I go to this and I think maybe halfway through, and this is a pretty common thing among comedians. You see when you go your first time, you're like, oh, they're not good. I can do better than that, or something like that. Or you're not, like, you see people. It's always discouraging when you see someone who's really good, but then you see someone who's terrible, and you're like, okay, like, well, I can be better than that. Yeah. And so during the mic, I think my friend and I wrote our names down on the thing, and then we ended up going up at the end. And I think I got some laughs. I was talking incredibly quickly and stuff like that, but I don't remember otherwise how it went. I do remember after, though, that like it was this incredible, just this high, like it was like so exhilarating, and the sense of accomplishment of doing it, because it was terrifying.
Was that the primary signal to you that you were onto something?
Yes. I would say so, for sure. I think it was that combined with later on in the first year, what I realized is anytime I wrote at least what I deemed at the time a good joke, it did not seem daunting that I was like, okay, now write another 1,000. I'm like, oh, I get the opportunity to write another 1,000 good joke. Like, to me, that was like the intrinsic fuel signal of like, oh no, like I actually enjoy this process of writing, and I like cracking the puzzle. It wasn't something like, I know writers say whatever, I don't enjoy writing, I enjoy having written. I did not feel that at all. It was, to me, a very joyful process. So I think it was those combined factors of the joy in the writing and the excitement afterwards, and eventually during. But when you're starting out, you're sort of dissociated a little bit, so you don't feel it as much.
Do you still feel that way about the writing?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Because I don't know if you've heard this. Someone said like, if someone offered you $1 billion to never do the activities, like an activity or your work, for the rest of your life, like, would you take the $1 billion? And like, if someone offered me $1 billion for the comedy writing, I would say no. Yeah, it's too it's too joyful. I call it, the flow state.
Sure.
Yeah. I call that. So to me, the flow state is like, okay, when you're in that state of in the zone. I think of it predominantly like you can do video games and sports and stuff like that. I call the writing, as pretentious as it sounds, sacred absorption, which to me is like flow state, but plus like intense alignment of like mind, body, and soul or whatever. That it is more of a spiritual feeling than just your standard flow state. Yeah. And so to me, that's what I have a system set up where I can get in that state basically every day.
I'd love to talk about that system. How do you do that? What's your writing process look like?
So I'm very systematic about creativity and stuff like that. And it's actually one of the most frustrating. What I hate about comedy to some degree is how late it is. Because I say I'm a morning man. I'm not a night guy. So I wake up. As long as I don't have late shows, my ideal, I wake up 5:45 in the morning, which is not, most comedians go to bed like around that time. But so I wake up, get a coffee, go on a no phone walk, for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Then I start writing in my apartment. And a lot of it is a combination of maybe writing new stuff, but tweaking the old. I try to like rewrite my act almost every morning because normally that'll trigger a new association, or I always think of it as a puzzle. So you're trying to move different pieces every which way. And so I'll do that for maybe an hour. I don't know, maybe, something like that. And then I'll go on another walk. To me, basically, it's a process of coffee, walking, writing, reading, and then just toggling between those different modes up until I crash. So like I always am big on like you have to optimize for your I don't know if you have like peak brain in the morning. I call it peak brain, where it's like you're firing in all cylinders. So I'm like extremely guarded about 6 a.m. to noon. And so I'll do the walks. Then the first one, I go to a coffee shop, and in Gramercy, I'll walk over there, and I try to spend about 2 hours there, and that's a combination of journaling, like reflection, and then basically continuing with the toggling between writing old stuff, writing new stuff. But a lot of the writing often happens outside of the coffee shop when you're just walking around. Because to me, it's just toggling between, I don't know if you know the focused mode and the diffuse mode. It's like grinding and then being in a state of receptivity, and then toggling between those two, and then just getting into it where you're just doing that every day. It really is quite conducive for creativity. But then there's a whole second part of the day was when you're doing mics or shows, and that changes. It like activates your comedy brain in a way that you cannot get if you're not performing. And so that'll give you new joke ideas, and then I'll listen to my sets and tweak stuff there. And oftentimes you'll get some of the best stuff after shows, I think, especially if it goes poorly, I think.
And you, when you're guarding those hours from 6 to noon, are you fully unplugged from the internet in general, or at least like the distractions of the
most of the distractions? I usually wait till the afternoon to get like more heavily on Twitter and stuff like that. But like in the morning, I'll use ChatGPT for different stuff. And I don't really text my friends. So I'm pretty guarded about
you're
those
being
hours.
Proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. Yes, it's a. And then I think it's only once I hit the dead brain hours, which is the early afternoon, where I'll revert back to more passivity. Yeah.
I'd love to talk if you can recall the where you worked in the city when you first started getting going. Obviously, I saw you at the New York Comedy Club, which is one of the biggest venues in the city.
Right.
What's your history here? Where have you performed?
Well, I started doing predominantly Laughing Buddha mics, which are. They were at the Climate Lounge in the East Village, and that was in a basement there. And I was doing a fair amount of those, and doing Greenwich Village Comedy Club. It's just like a lot of open mics during the day. And I didn't do, so it was very interesting. Because I had that self-doubt, I wasn't doing that much stand-up at all in the first 6 to 8 months. I think I may have performed 10, 15 times or something like that. I would do 5 mics or something, and then I would take 4 months off or something like that. And so I was not really committed to it. So I wasn't part of the scene, and so I wasn't doing any shows. I was just at I was doing, mostly in the East Village and Greenwich Village. And it was only after the pandemic where I started to branch out, did some more Brooklyn, started getting booked on shows where you're now all over the place in the city, and that was good because I don't know if you know much about open mics, but it's like just comics for the most part. And then when you finally get in front of a real audience, it's like, oh, this is way better, and it feels like you're actually doing comedy. Yeah. So
most of the early opportunities that you created for yourself, you just showed up at places where you knew you could get on a list to be able to perform?
Yes, exactly. But I don't even think of that as an opportunity. Yeah, I guess it's just you show up, you're kind of honing your craft. No one cares. Everyone's on their phone. Until you build up enough of a reputation, people really aren't listening for the most part, and it's infuriating. But now I do it to the new people. So
For sure.
it's bad. It's just, I get it now. It's like you go to, I mean, if you're doing 14 mics a week and you don't want to hear the new guy tell an awful joke or like, so you see the new guys and you're like, okay, nice. I can tune out for a little bit, which is not good. And it's sort of toxic, but I think that is kind of a function of, or how the system works, at least in Manhattan. But then, so I think things started going where you start meeting friends and you start doing well at the mics and people see you who book shows and then they put you on their shows. And then what helped is in 2022, I won the Comedy Mob Festival. That was a competition, I think, with like 64 people or whatever.
Wow.
I think there were 3 rounds. And as a result there, I got passed at a club called Stand Up New York.
Sure.
And then from there, I got passed at Rodney's. I got into New York Comedy Club in January. So I've only been in there for 5 months. So that's why when you saw me, I was doing I only do check spots there.
Yeah.
So which we can talk about that too. It's a brutal spot sometimes, but the one on Monday was good.
When you say you get passed, I think I know what that means, but
it's just like you get the sign. You're just like you're in the club now. So and then you get spots, but the issue is like there's still no guarantees once you get it, but you do have to like get into the clubs, and so it's most people are not passed. So and it's one of those things you have to find your way, and there's a lot of different ways in. But if by winning that festival, it was like one of the conditions was you got to be in the club. And then that's where you work your way up. You do predominantly checks spots as well. Yeah.
I assume that was the biggest moment so far in your comedy career, winning that.
I've won many festivals. No, I won another festival. It was the first the Comedy Mob was the first really validating one. Cause that was still pretty early on. And then I won the Laughing Buddha Festival in 2024. New York, was it pretty validating to get in there?
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, so much of it's just like, I'm not so big into the actual achievements of it. Like my friends were almost taken aback how not excited I was after winning either of those. Cause I'm just like, I don't know. I really like the, I don't know if you heard the before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Of course,
after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Yeah. To me, the process is so joyful that I think it's silly to get so attached into the, I got this or I didn't get this or something like that. And I think it helps me, stay sane in this when you don't get something you don't deserve or what have you, because it's so much of it is in the actual, the doing of it. And, I think that's also a related thing. I think it impacts the creativity because there's a concept I had heard called emotional transference, which is the state in which you create something is the state in which the audience receives it. So if you're just going through your motions and you're bitter because you haven't gotten things, maybe the audience is going to sense that you don't actually care about this thing. But if you're in the coffee shop, excited and like kind of laughing to yourself, I think the audience can sense that as well. Yeah. And so to me, that's the mantra, chop wood, carry water, just like with a smile on your face. Just like, I think that's the sustainable way. So you don't poison the sacredness of this. Yeah.
Which goes back to how crucial it is to find work that legitimately brings you joy, that you actually love. For
sure. It's that whole like what's work, what's play to you that's work to others and stuff like that. Yeah, I completely agree. But it's very hard to find. I
think you said this earlier that at one point you made the determination that you could make a career out of this. Mm-hmm. How did you know that? Or what went into that conclusion?
Maybe it was, I think I was getting a lot of positive feedback from comedians that were like saying, oh, like you could be big and stuff like that. And that was to the point where I wasn't even thinking of myself that way, but I kept getting it. And I think one of the jarring things very early on was I was getting all this praise from comics, but people like friends of mine outside of comics were not that way. And so there was like this tremendous disparity between how comics perceived me and how people outside of it perceive me. And so that was, and I was like, well, shouldn't the people who have known me all my life know me better? But I don't know. I think they eventually came along. I have a joke about how they've believed in me ever since day 982. Yeah. But I think getting a lot of that positive feedback from the community early and believing in me was like huge. And then over time, I think I have like little rules that are like ways of mitigating some of the risk, I think, in comedy, where I always say I just want like a clean hour where I'm like, can I can I crush with original clean material for an hour? And I think you're almost guaranteed a career in comedy if you can do that. It's just very hard.
Yeah.
But that like it brings me peace that I'm like working towards that. And obviously I'm not going to just only write clean material for the sake of that. But I think that gives me conviction. Like if you can do that, you're pretty much guaranteed a career.
How would you describe, if you have one, your comedy style?
Well, I'm curious how you would describe it. How different am I versus how you were how you saw me on stage versus?
I think, I mean, in the little time we've spent together, I think you're far more thoughtful. Obviously, very intellectually minded.
Yes, that's not conveyed in my silliness.
Well, I think what I guess I should have expected that to some degree, because what I think makes me personally howl at stand-up comedy events is great writing. That to me is, some people love physical comedy and slapstick, and that's what does it for them. I've never been that person.
Right.
I think it's the ability to play around with words, surprising ideas, observations about the world and life that are ridiculous and hilarious and true.
Right.
That often really get me. That to me is how I assess great comedy.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So people have said early on with me that I found my voice early, and I actually would disagree with that. And I get why they would say that, like a version of it where you can do the deadpan stuff like that. Because to me, it's like I want to bring more of the intellectual, thoughtful stuff, but it's just very hard to. It's like it's a hard level of comedy to be both insightful and get laughs in a lot of these, I mean, especially in open mics and stuff like that. And so that's actually something I'm actively working on, trying to bring a little more depth to the act. It's just, it's quite tough, especially when no one knows who you are and you're doing a check spot. And like, sometimes I'll do those where you'll see me and no one's paying attention because they're like, oh, the show's over. This is like, the scrub is on after.
Yeah.
And so you're doing your best stuff to like zero attention and stuff like that. So as I get further in comedy and hopefully get some kind of fan base, I'll be able to bring in more of the stuff that interests me as well. And I always do stuff that I find funny, but it's still, I would say, pretty shallow.
I can't think of one comedian I've seen that has brought up modern major thinkers like James Hollis, Jordan Peterson, Joseph Campbell. And obviously this would speak to me because I love this shit. And I would find it brilliant and interesting. I'm thinking about old clips I've seen from Hicks from the 80s and 90s, and he was way ahead of his time with a lot of what he says. And you watch it now and you're like, this guy's a genius.
Right.
He's saying things that are obviously true, and he's just also this intellectual comedian. And I wonder if there might be space for that. I don't know. I don't know how much.
Second coming of Hicks.
Second coming of Hicks.
Who knows? I mean, to me, it's more of, what I perceive where I'm at right now is just honing my joke machine. And then as that is honed, I'll be able to just kind of run whatever I find interesting or stories and stuff through that joke machine. It's just getting good enough at the craft to be able to do so. And I think I will be able to. And I definitely have made steps towards that with some of my material, but it's just going to take a long time. Yeah.
Scott Adams has this line, which I wouldn't be surprised if you've heard of, called focus on your systems, not your goals, right?
Yeah, no, I got into a lot of debates at investment banking about that because there was a very goal-oriented culture, and I was a systems hound. So sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just be curious at this point. I mean, it sounds like you're kind of hitting your stride right now.
I hope not. I hope not. This better not be my stride.
Your daily habits. Is that the description you gave of getting up at 6, protecting 6 to noon?
Yeah.
Is that 4 days a week?
No, 7 days a week.
It's 7 days a week.
Yeah, for years and years. Yeah.
So I mean, that's full-on commitment, right?
And that's just the beginning of the day. Then I have a whole second part of the day, but it's not as it's just not as like of the peak holy brain. But I do that every day. And I mean, sometime if I'm sick or something like that, or I drink too much, I'll do a lesser, but basically every day. The issue is, and what I've talked to my friends is, when you do it to that intensity or that consistency with that kind of system and routine, the counter argument to that is that you start to live like too habitually, and you're like in a loop.
Yeah.
And so you're not having enough novel experience. Like you're talking about, you're going to all different shows. You're just like inviting more serendipity. Whereas when I do this, I'm sort of closed off, and it's like, yeah, it serves a purpose. You get more stuff done, but you're actually kind of inhibiting possibilities that otherwise would be. So I think there's a counter argument, and I think that's something I'm working on now. Is like, is this serving me to? And I agree with the morning part. I think sometimes the other, should I be doing fewer mics and then and just having new experiences or stuff like that is where I'm considering of like the downside of having such a regimented schedule. Yeah.
In your mind, what makes a great comedian? When you think about that question, what qualities? What have you seen? The people that you love, what do they have that separates them? I do think I have no idea. It really for me is just I mean originality. I don't think I'm going to give a very unoriginal answer for this, but originality to me is fascinating. And then I can't really. It's something I actually spend very little time thinking about because for some reason I've never been keen on reverse engineering what constitutes a great comic and then trying to apply it to my own. Yeah.
Because I think once again, it's like a top down approach. I'm purely bottom up.
Yes.
Let's just do what you find. I just have listened to enough podcasts. Just do what you find funny. Try it a million times. And then go from there. So I don't know. It's something that, I guess if I was to think about it, I think my brain immediately changes thoughts because I'm just like, who cares? It's it makes me laugh. Yeah.
One of my favorite Nassim Taleb lines is it's easier to engineer than reverse engineer. Trying to untangle how something works is often impossible.
Yeah.
But like creating something to move you forward or creating your own art that you think is funny is much easier and much simpler a lot of times.
Completely agree. Yeah. There's plenty of things I've intellectualized about comedy, but deconstructing others is not one of them. I would say.
Yeah. I like to ask this question too. This is a very New York based question, but are there people that come to mind when you think about really talented comedians or artists that you've seen that you believe are world-class performers that no one's ever heard of or very few people have performed or have ever heard of?
Well, I'm biased towards like friends of mine and stuff like that are world-class performers.
Or just so goddamn good at this that...
It's a... Here's the issue with this question. People are going to feel left out. So this is where I'm hesitant. I would say I think my good friend Tim Martin is criminally underrated. He's been a commercial actor. He acted in Broad City and he's done a lot of stuff. He was huge in the improv scene since like 2008 and stuff like that, and he's just truly a tremendous talent, both writing and performing. I think he has the perfect blend. And he's only been doing stand up a couple of years because he moved over from improv, and he's exceptional. And then the other who's like, I feel like I should mention him. I just feel bad because I have some good friends that are great comedians, but I never that are like Max Fine, Brian Elberg. But there's one that is like just an insane man, just a tremendous. He's also a novelist. He's a boxing coach, novelist / stand-up comedian, and Harold Rogers. So he's an insane man, and but it still makes sense, and his comedy is just so. He's probably the person I enjoy watching the most because it's the exact opposite of me, where mine's so logical or whatever. He's just all over the place, and an insane man, and it's an authentic in a completely different way, and he's also just like this incredible novelist as well. So I think he. It would shock me if he didn't. I mean, he's already sold multiple books and stuff like that, so he's already well on his way. But those are the people that come to mind.
Do you get to see these people as you are waiting to go on stage? How are you able to...
Yeah, I met them all at open mics. So it's a really cool thing where I think part of the pressure of doing open mics is you don't want to suck in front of your friends who you really respect, because you form a group of people that are like that mean a lot to you, and you really admire them, and you respect their opinion, and you don't want to go on stage and humiliate yourself. And so when you see, that's why I like watching a Harold, where his style is so different from me, but it's like, oh, this is it just like shows you what is out there, and like you want to like live up to that. And I'm sure he feels the same way about me. But yeah, I've just met all these people through the open mic scene.
What are your favorite venues in New York to either perform at or consume comedy?
New York Comedy Club is fantastic to perform, and I've watched shows there. Comedy Cellar's great. Those are the two. I've enjoyed shows at the Stand. I've heard Sesh Comedy's great, but I've never performed there or watched a show. I would say those. I mean, you've been to more. You would probably have a better answer than me.
Yeah, I've asked former guests too what makes a great venue, and Taylor actually said he thought the best one was the Midtown.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And I don't think I'd ever been there until I saw you there.
Really?
And it's just so the noise, like just the auditory experience in there is terrific.
Yeah,
it's a small
pleasant auditory experience. Yeah.
Delightful. Yes.
Yeah. Did he break down the different things about how you want low ceilings? You don't want it to be a deep room. You want it to be dark. You want sound system to be good. That's all the stuff, like, because when you come up, you do so many terrible shows that don't have that, and you're like, okay, well, that's why no one's getting laughs and stuff like that. And so that's like a perfect, like, it's called a kill box, like, because you can really crush in that room because the laughs are bouncing off. Everyone's packed in like sardines, and yeah, that's a great room.
Yeah. I mentioned before we started recording that a couple guests I've already had on, they are friends of yours, that you know them. I'd love to talk about the community in New York of
I thought you were saying like Jordan Peterson. I don't. When did I say I was friends with Jordan? Yeah, the community. Yeah.
How long did it take for that to feel real for you?
I think I was after COVID, so I did basically a year of comedy before the pandemic, but it was not a year because I was in and out and not and doing mics here and there. But after the pandemic, it did not take me that long to find people. Just when you do enough mics, maybe 6 to 12 months after that. So I guess from the time I started, a couple of years, but it was one of those things where, like, I mean, I play spike ball with Taylor, who you've had on the podcast, and we have like a whole group. We go get margaritas with the boys and all the stuff. And the community is like one of the best things because I heard what is it? I think it was do you know Shopify? Yeah, you know Shopify. Yeah. Toby, he said something like about how like the goal in life or whatever is to do challenging things surrounded by friends. And that's been sort of my mantra in comedy, where we just have such a great time, but we're also pushing each other to get as funny as possible. We want to be the best or whatever. And so it's this interesting combination of like genuine friendship, like deep friendship, but also this competitive drive to like get good. So we all push each other, but it is a way where we are rooting for each other's success. And so I'm very grateful for that. Because I've always said that most of life is about game plus tribe. Everything else is a rounding error. So once you have your like vocation and your kindred spirits, that's like a good center to base your life off.
I think. Do you feel like most comedians in New York have that sense of community and that tribe? Or
some people do. I've talked to others and they're like, I can't connect to that at all. And then other people completely agree and they're like, You get in far enough and you're like, these are the people I really resonate with. And then you talk to people outside of it and they're like, they're like, oh, that's awesome that you do that. But they can't connect to the drive, and they cannot connect, I think, to maybe the skin in the game and what it takes and the humiliation endured or whatever to actually like make this thing happen. So it is nice to have people that can connect to it. But it does vary when I talk to people how much they've felt part of the comedy community.
Yeah. I love to close conversations talking about the subject of success. You can take that however you'd like, but how do you think about success as it pertains to your vocation right now, as it pertains to your stand-up comedy career?
To me, I think a lot of it is I think of it reminds me of something that a guy I worked with in banking said, like, it's a cake eating contest and the only reward is more cake. And I think about that as like you got to find the thing that you love the cake. And so to me, success is just being able to continue doing this thing for as long as I can and doing it at a higher and higher level. And so success to me is having maybe a fan base and being able to do as many shows as I want and stuff like that, and keep mastering the craft, and then maybe explore other avenues within comedy. But right now, success would just be getting into all the clubs, starting to have a fan base, start touring, and then also just have a lot of fun with my other friends in comedy.
I want to close with this because I hope these conversations might be inspiring for people that don't live in New York yet or aren't yet. They're you when you were working at a banking job.
Yeah.
And I like profiling people who have put, you just use this phrase, like put their own skin in the game of their own life, and they put their ass. And they're doing the thing. They have opted to go for it. I know this is not an easy journey going through trying to create a stand-up comedy career from nothing. I'd love to close with just having you comment on whether you feel like it's undoubtedly been worth giving up, your first career, the money-making world, and how you think about that at this point in your career.
I think it's, I would never go back to it. I think it's too early to say where like, who knows at 40 if my life is sad, and then I'll be like, well, at least I had my fun little spike ball times with my open mic friends. So I don't like, that's where I'm realistic. Like it's not as simplistic as just like go after your dream and then it's like, this is great, because it's a ton of fun and it's been rewarding and I think things will pay off. But it's not like, oh, automatic, like this is the right way, this is the wrong way. To me, it's just mostly about figuring out your alignment in life, and to me, this is not something that I almost feel like I actively decided. It was sort of like called upon, and me surrendering to that feeling of like, I didn't control that I was going to feel that way about writing jokes, or that I would feel that ecstasy getting off stage. That was just something that like my body told me, that it was almost just like chosen for me. Because I've had many things in my life that I've been interested in. I played a lot of sports growing up, but it never felt that like that inner compulsiveness that was like, I have to just keep doing this. So to me, it's not so much about deciding whether or not to take the leap. It's just like figuring out, are you aligned? And I was very misaligned in that. And I was like, okay, let's find a way to feel. And when I say aligned, I think it's, how can I bring out the best version of the version of myself that I like the most? And I think that's what comedy did, and certainly what finance didn't. So I have no regrets of it, and but hopefully it works out. I mean,
incredibly well put. I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you, bro.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.